Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a horror slasher film, Urban Legend. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The film begins on a dark, rainy night with a young woman named Mitch driving her pickup truck while listening to a campus radio DJ from Pendleton University. Mitch takes her eyes off the road to reach something from the backseat, but then a car horns at her, prompting her to maneuver her vehicle to avoid colliding. After almost getting in an accident, Mitch listens to a song. She's jamming to the song when she realizes she's almost out of gas, so she stops at a nearby gas station. The strange-looking attendant startles her as he suddenly appears at her window. She ignores that and gives her credit card so the attendant can fill her tank. As the attendant puts the nozzle in the tank, he notices something in her backseat. He doesn't say something and runs inside the store, but he comes out shortly after and informs Mitch that her credit card company is on the line to speak with her. Mitch reluctantly follows the attendant into his office, discovering no one on the phone. She runs to the door to leave, but realizes it is locked. The attendant suddenly approaches her and stutters to say something, so she budges her way out of the office. Mitch returns to her car screaming and drives over to the attendant, who yells that someone is in the backseat. She calms herself while going away when she sees someone in her backseat. She gasps in shock and fear, but the mysterious person behind swings the axe at her, breaking her window. That same night, inside a coffee shop lounge at the university, College Student Park tells a 25-year-old urban legend to his friends. It's called the Stanley Hall Massacre, in which an abnormal psychology doctor went crazy. Brenda and Nat listen with skepticism as Park tells them that the doctor slashed the throats of every student that opened their doors for him before stabbing himself in the heart. This legend created an annual frat party to commemorate the said massacre on the campus. A Pontifical College reporter joins the group and claims it's an urban legend only. Nat agrees as there's no proof, but Park adds that Pendleton University might have hidden the evidence from the media as it would permanently affect enrollment. Reporter sneers at Park's stories before leaving, and Brenda does not even bother to hide her attraction toward the reporter. After a while, Nat and Brenda walk toward the closed-down Stanley Hall campus building, where Brenda convinces Nat to chant Bloody Mary 5 times as a gag. They laugh at their silliness when they hear a guy's faint screams of pain. They walk away because of fear when a misfit student named Nerd surprises them. He taunts them over going inside the boarded-up building. Brenda and Nat split ways, and Nat returns to her dorm room to find her roommate being intimate with a goth guy. Nat puts herself to sleep wearing a headset so she can't hear their hormone noises. The following day, Professor discusses folklore and urban legends and asks Brenda to be a volunteer for his little experiment. Brenda comes upstage, where Professor gives her pop rock candy and a can of soda. Brenda refuses to accept the soda as there's a folklore that the person's stomach and intestines explode if mixed. Brenda claims that a commercial kid died because of mixing pop rock candy and soda, but Professor debunks it. He shows pictures of the commercial kid, alive and well, and working as an ad executive. However, Brenda is still reluctant to drink the soda, so Nerd volunteers instead. He takes the pop rock candy and drinks the soda to prove that the urban legend is true. Professor and the class laugh as Nerd's stomach do not explode. However, Nerd suddenly loses balance and falls off the stairs as his mouth foams. Everyone worried about Nerd, who smirks at Brenda, indicating it's a prank. They laugh at his silliness before returning to their seats. Later that day, Brenda and Nat see the dean and campus security guard confiscating copies of the school newspapers detailing the decapitation murder last night. Reporter protests to the dean about a possible serial killer on campus, but the guard informs him that Pendleton University has been named the safest university in the U.S. Later that night, Nat and the group watch the news in the coffee house. The gas station attendant is the primary suspect in Mitch's murder, and he is on the loose. They wonder if anyone knows Mitch, but neither of them claims to know the murder victim. After class, Nat returns to her dorm, where it is revealed that she and Mitch were captains of the cheerleading squad in the high school yearbook. Nat closes the book after Nerd enters the room to ask if she's going to the frat party. However, he notices her melancholic facial expression and consoles her. Nerd takes her into a secluded area in the nearby woods to distract her. Nat shares her friendship with Mitch, but refuses to tell Nerd any further details. Nerd reassures her that he knows what she's going through, but Nat becomes angry after realizing that he's only after sexual pleasure. Nat demands to be taken home, but Nerd exits the car to take a piss first. While peeing, someone suddenly attacks him from behind with a rope. Nat goes out to check on Nerd, as he hasn't returned after a few minutes. However, she faces a mysterious person with a heavy hooded coat, prompting her to return inside the vehicle and lock it, believing that the car might be ghost-proof. Nat desperately starts the ragged car when something suddenly drops on top of the vehicle. The hooded person suddenly appears on her windshield, prompting Nat to drive off and causing Nerd to be choked to death because of the rope attached to the car's bumper, causing the car to stop suddenly and the hooded person to be thrown. However, it gets up and breaks the windshield, prompting Nat to drive back and crash into the tree. Nerd's body suddenly drops on top of the car, prompting Nat to run for her shitty life. In a panic, she goes to the campus security office and tells the guard about the killing. They return to check it out, but find it calm and empty, with the car and Nerd's body gone. The following day, Nat's friends are skeptical about Nerd's disappearance. They think it's one of Nerd's practical jokes, as what happened before in the woods is an urban legend. Because of this, Nat realizes that someone on campus is turning these urban legends into a reality. Later that day, Nat goes to the library to research urban legends by reading a book. While checking out the book with DJ, Nat's roommate meets a fellow goth guy online and plans to meet for some hormone yoga. She exits her room to prepare for the date, and when she returns from the bathroom, the killer suddenly attacks her. Not long after, Nat arrives and assumes the noises are of her roommate having hormone exchange again. The killer pulls out the electrical plugs to keep it dark, and Nat goes to bed with her back on them, not realizing her roommate is being strangled to death. The following day, Nat wakes up only to see blood on the floor from her roommate's bed. She removes the blanket off her roommate and sees her wrist slashed and writing on the wall. It's a message from the killer, teasing her that she's supposed to be glad she didn't turn on the lights last night. The roommate's death spreads like wildfire on campus, and everyone thinks she committed suicide, as she was diagnosed as manic-depressive. Even the guard and the dean think it's a morbid suicide, because no forced entry or foul play is involved. Despite Nat insisting that her roommate was killed by someone last night, no one believed her. Later, Nat is approached by a reporter who shows a photocopy of her high school yearbook and asks for an interview. Reporter promises to keep their conversation off the record, so Nat agrees. Nat shares her idea about a serial killer turning these urban legends into a reality, but the question of why remains. Nat then realizes that the day is the 25th anniversary of the Stanley Hall's massacre, so reporter takes her to his hidden spot, where he keeps a record of his articles. However, the 1973 yearbook is missing, so they ask the janitor, who worked in the university before the said massacre. Nevertheless, he tells them to go ask Professor and leaves. So they go to Professor's office, and they break in upon realizing he's not there. Reporter searches his desk, while Nat wanders around the room, focusing on the books on the wall. However, she finds a hidden room, where she finds the same heavy hooded coat and an axe that presumably killed Mitch. Nat calls reporter's attention, and they both realize that Professor might be the killer. Suddenly, they hear someone entering, so they lock themselves in the room. They wait a few moments before coming out again, only to be caught red-handed by Professor. The two were taken to the dean's office. They accuse Professor of being a murderer, but he clarifies that the axe is a prop for his folklore class. Reporter then brings up the Stanley Hall massacre, so the dean asks Professor to leave. Once alone, the dean reveals that Nat was once on probation for reckless endangerment, while reporter is fired from the school newspaper. The dean tells the two to stop investigating something that never happened. Outside, Nat pisses reporter off after she continues to avoid his questions about her past, or the fact that she knew Mitch. Later that day, Nat watches Brenda doing laps in the swimming pool when she sees someone. It's the killer wearing the hooded coat approaching Brenda, so Nat breaks the window with a chair. But she soon realizes it's a fellow student. In the lockers, Nat finally confides in Brenda and confesses that she knew Mitch. The flashback shows Nat and Mitch in a car at night, and the story about the gang's high beam initiation had been going around. It happens when an incoming car flashes its lights at a vehicle as a warning not to drive without lights in the dark. In that case, Mitch turns her lights off and chases the car that flashes its lights at her. Nat remains in the passenger seat silently and doesn't stop Mitch until its driver loses control. The ambulance arrives shortly after, but the driver is already dead. Fortunately for them, the court only gave them probation, but after that incident, Nat never spoke to Mitch again. Meanwhile, while cleaning his work desk, reporter accidentally finds a newspaper from about 25 years ago, showing that Professor is the sole survivor of the Stanley Hall's massacre. On the other hand, the dean refuses to get more security on the campus because of the recent events. The guard gets pissed off and leaves. Then, the killer slashes Dean's ankles before removing himself from underneath the car. The dean crawls in fear for his life, while the killer starts his car and watches as it runs over the victim, killing him with the metal barriers. Meanwhile, reporter arrives at the fraternity house party park and shows the old newspaper to Nat, claiming that Professor may be responsible for the recent killings. He believes that Professor went mad after surviving the massacre and started killing students. Nat suggests calling the police, but reporter informs her that the dean warned the authorities about the possibility of prank calls that night, especially from the two of them. Nat breaks down into tears from fear and anxiousness, so reporter comforts her using his words first, but smelly tongue later. Brenda sees this and leaves the party in a jealous rage. Meanwhile, the guard investigates Professor's office to ensure he's innocent, but then slips on a pool of blood on the floor. At this time, reporter tells Park to end his party early, so Park stops the party and asks everybody to listen to reporter. He tells them about a killer on campus, but Park taunts him instead. He suggests that reporter is the killer, and he's killing people, so his name will be known in the media as a journalist. Reporter diverts his embarrassment and tells Nat to wait while he calls for help. Meanwhile, DJ excuses herself from the party and returns to the radio station. A little later, Park receives an anonymous call that he tracks within his house. So Park taunts the caller that maybe it's the babysitter's urban legend, where the babysitter gets the same phone call and suspects that it's coming from the room where she kept the children asleep. However, the caller informs him that it's the urban legend about the old lady who dries her wet dog in the microwave. Park rushes to his kitchen and finds the microwave full of blood and meat from his dead dog. Park runs to a nearby bathroom to throw off when the killer suddenly drowns him in the bowl. Shortly after, Park wakes up tied, so the killer pours pop rocks and liquid down his throat until he vomits blood and stops moving. While Nat tries to contact reporter, the killer murders DJ's assistant before chasing her around the building with an axe. Nat hears DJ's screams for help over the radio, but no one pays attention as they believe it's a record, so she runs to the station to help BJ, but it's too late as the killer corners BJ. Nat can only scream in a chicken voice as the killer repeatedly swings its axe to murder DJ. The guard hears DJ's last broadcast and decides to hunt down the killer despite the strong thunderstorm. Nat runs into reporter outside her dorm room and becomes suspicious of his whereabouts when DJ is killed. She ignores that and finds Brenda looking for them. Nat informs her about DJ's death, but reporter takes them into his car to drive to town, as the phones on the campus are cut off. They stop at a nearby gas station, where reporter exits the vehicle to call the police. Brenda and Nat make up when they smell a strange odor from the back. They check the trunk and discover the mangled body of Professor. They run away in fear and split up in the woods. Nat quickly returns to the road, where she is picked up by the janitor, but the killer appears in a car and chases them until their vehicle loses control and crashes into the cornfield. The janitor is dead after hitting his head, while Nat returns to the campus and tries to contact the police. However, she hears screams from the Stanley building, where there's a light on the third floor. She breaks in, only to find the dead bodies of Park, the dean, and Nerd. She also finds Brenda lying in a bed, causing her to break down as her friend dies. However, Brenda gets up and knocks Nat unconscious. Moments later, Nat finds herself tied to the bed, with the killer finally removing the hood, revealing it to be Brenda. Brenda reveals that the driver killed by Nat and Mitch because of their practical joke is actually her boyfriend. Brenda befriended Nat to torment her with these urban legends to get revenge. She also confesses to planting Professor's body in reporter's car trunk in order to put the blame on him after she's done. So Brenda stabs her stomach to kill her with another urban legend, the kidney heist, when the guard suddenly arrives to rescue Nat. However, Brenda attacks the guard with a hidden knife, steals the gun away, and points it at Nat. Just then, reporter appears, applauding Brenda for her revenge plan and offers to be a part of it for his career. However, he fails to fool Brenda, so she holds them at gunpoint. Fortunately, the guard shoots Brenda before she can kill either of them. After this, Nat steals the gun from Brenda and hits her with it, causing her to be thrown out the window. Reporter and Nat drive to get help when Brenda appears from the backseat and attacks them with an axe. They struggle as they fight Brenda, so reporter smashes the car into a guardrail, causing Brenda to smash through the windshield and fall off the bridge into a river far below. Sometime later, at a different university, a group of college students at a different university discusses the recent Pendleton massacre and the urban legends. The film ends with one of the students volunteering to tell the story right, revealing the still-alive Brenda with a different haircut. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.